Okay, so what I want to show you guys today is an overview on how to create a layer mask. In my earlier Photoshop technique video, I used this technique to be able to bring photos in and put them on different backgrounds. And there is a select and mask tool or a refine mask option that was a little hard to show because the image I was using was a little blurry. There was not a lot of contrast between the figure and the background. So I have two images here, this one of this young lady and then this one of this horse with its mane blowing in the wind. So I'm going to start with the young lady, and I'm going to start by coming over into my layers panel, and I'm going to go up and I'm going to go into this pull down menu, and I'm going to duplicate my layer, and that's going to come up with this little dialog box. It's asking me what I would like to call it. Background copy is fine for me. Click OK. We'll come back over into my layers again, and we'll just turn off the background. So this starts our non-destructive editing technique by making a copy of the background. And I am working in the original photo. If I go up to image size, you'll notice that my resolution is at 300 pixels per inch. This is how they were downloaded, so they are a very high quality photo. And I'm going to start now. I'm going to go to my pen tool, and just so you guys can see is the paths over here. I'm going to actually zoom in, but as I start to create a path, it will actually create a new path here, and it will be a working path. So I'm going to zoom into my figure, and you can see how much, if you watched the last video, how much higher res this photo is. So it doesn't really pixelate when I get this close. Again, I work with precision tools. I'm going to switch over to my Crosshair. I'm going to zoom in a little bit further. And again, when we're using the pen tool, I'm going to click, hold, and pull in the direction that I'm going. So I'm pulling out handles. I'm clicking to make the point, and I'm pulling out the handles that allow me to adjust the line if I need to go back and do so. I'm going to start here, and I'm going to pull upwards, and we can see the handles come out. And unlike Illustrator, it does not draw what the next line is going to look like. So I kind of have to just use my judgment, but I just keep dragging and pulling. And you'll notice that right here, this line doesn't do exactly what I want to do. So I use two keys, and that's Command and Option. Option allows me to adjust one side of the line, and that's holding down Option or Alt on a PC. And then the other key I will use is I will use Command, which gives me the direct select tool. See how it adjusts both sides of the line? If this gets so distorted, you can always come back to the point, click and hold on the point and pull out with holding down Alt or Option on a Mac. So you'll see me go through and make these adjustments as I go, but that's what I'm doing. I'm holding down the Command key for the direct select tool, or Control on a PC, Option for the anchor point tool, or Alt on a PC. So that's how I adjust my stroke as I go. I'm also using the space bar to kind of move my canvas so I don't have to zoom out. I find if I'm zoomed in, I actually go through this faster because I don't ever know where I am. finish up here, I just want to make a couple notes. And we still have a little section up here to finish up. But I am doing all of this with a mouse and keyboard. So I'm not using a tablet of any kind. Another thing that may come up is the question of why I'm not using like the magic wand or the quick select tool. And as you're watching, you can see, and we're actually zoomed into one of these areas where the contrast between the background and the foreground is non-existent. So with a quick select tool, it wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the plastic bag and the background. And even if it could, even if we had a high contrast between all of the foreground, the pen tool and using the path is a tried and true method, and you know what results you're going to get by using this method. The quick selection or magic wand tool, while quick, right, while a little bit faster and a little less tedious, the results vary tremendously. So with this, I have a little bit more freedom on exactly what I want to do or how I want my mask to appear. And like I said, you know what you're going to get. So it's what I use anytime I have to put a mask on something. So what I'm going to do now is we can go up here and we can see that that Photoshop created a working path or a work path from our pen marks. What I want to do is I want to double click on that and call this path 1. That's fine. That's just going to save the path. Another thing I want to point out is that when I was going around her hair, you'll notice that I left out the strands, and I left out all these little hair strands that are coming up. That's not because I'm trying to eliminate them, because if I do, it will look really odd. But it's because we'll go back in with the select and mask tool and pull all those back out. So our next step is to take our path 1 here, and come down to the bottom of the panel. And we just want to click the third icon from the left. It's make path a selection, or turn the selection into marching ants, basically, right? Or turn the path into marching ants, which is also a selection. So once we can do that, it kind of looks like ants from a distance. But you're basically taking your path and you're turning it into a selection. So once this is done, I want to go back to my layers. I want to have my background copy selected. And I want to come down at the bottom of my layers panel, and the third icon from the left, if I zoom in here, this little guy here is called the layer mask tool. And I want to click that. And that's going to knock our background out. And as you can see, it looks very, well, sharp, should we say? So we definitely still have some work to do on the entire mask. There's parts that just don't make sense because our hair comes down. But it just looks like it's been cut out with a pair of scissors, and that's never a good look. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have with my layer mask selected, and that's dictated by these 4 brackets around the mask itself. If we were on our photo, it would be this one. See how the 4 brackets have moved around the photo. So we're on the layer mask. So with the layer mask selected, I want to come up to select and do select and mask. And click on that. That's going to open up a new window. And I generally, especially if I'm editing over top of another photo, I will use this view, which is an overlay view. And what I want to do is I want to come up to my upper left hand corner, and I want to use the second tool from the top. And if it will give me a name, the Refine Edge Brush Tool. If we come over here, the reason we can't see a circle is because it's really small. So if we right click, we can increase the size. And what we want to do is I'm going to zoom in, and I'm zooming in by hitting Command or Control plus on the keyboard. And I'm moving around with the space bar again. I want to go as far in as I think I need to go in. And if I'm working, this is at least for me, if I'm working with a smaller area, I'll make the brush smaller. So I'm doing that by hitting open bracket on the keyboard. I'll make it just a little bit smaller. And I'm just going to paint in where I know there's some hair. So I'm going to come in here and touch up her eyebrows a little bit. It's a little hard to see, but what is happening is it is going in and it's finding those hairs and it's pulling that out. Probably a better way to look at this would be we change our view to on white so we can actually see what's happening. Now, I may have made a mistake by leaving in or leaving out this hair that comes down right here because I really don't know where it is. But we're going to do something to rectify that mistake when I was making the path. So I'm just going to come up here and I'm just going to go around. I'm going to paint around the edges. You can use a bigger brush if I want it up here. And you really can't go too far with this because it's going to pull out all the hair. It's going to pull out all the background. You know, you probably don't want to go too far into the hair, just around the edges. It is the refined edge tool. But what we're trying to do is we want to pull all these strands of hair back out because nobody's hair is this perfect. It's not cut this perfectly. And it's never photographed like that. So we don't have to get all the strands that come out here, but we certainly do want to get the strands that are just on the edge. And again, I was very loose in this section of the path as well because I knew I could just come in and just fix this up. I'm just going to come around and do all that to these edges. I'm brushing outside of it just to make sure it doesn't pick up anything like these strands are here. And you'll see right here, it's actually taking away some of the neck. And we'll come in and fix that up a little bit later. But it's even pulling out these little strands of hair that exist right there. And I just want to go around and make sure I got all that. We'll come back up in here with the bigger brush and see if we can't just bring in this with a simple stroke. I just don't think we're going to get what we want. It's not even, there's hair that exists right there. And maybe it is pulling it up, but I'm gonna try to do something else. There was also plenty of like hair on our arm and on our face that we want to make sure that we have, you know, but let's try to figure out, and let's go ahead and get her hair back so we can go back in with the refine edge tool and fix it so it's kind of like this up here. So I'm going to go and I'm going to take the next tool down, which is just a standard brush tool. I'm going to increase my brush size by hitting close bracket. I'm just going to bring all this back in. I don't really know where it is, and that's fine because I can come back in with the minus brush and take some of this out. So if I zoom back in again, so I'm going to take this out just a little bit and try to get as close to the hair as possible. And again, I probably should have gone over all of this with my pen tool to start. But I didn't, but that's okay, we can fix it. So now I'm going to go back to my refine edge brush tool and then just go over this again. And this will start pulling out that background, that blue. And I'm not going crazy just so you guys can see the effects of it. And here it's getting a little confused. I think there's too much blue. by making the brush bigger. Sometimes the brush size does really matter with how much it picks up, how much it takes away. So you can see it taking away a little bit of her face, and I don't really like that, but we'll fix that too. And it took out a little bit of her strap there. And once we're kind of satisfied with the hair, what we have to do now is where I said it kind of took out her face, we want to take the standard kind of brush tool here. And with the plus button, we just want to paint back in right along her edge of her face. And this would be like the one instance I think that a pen may be a little bit better. You have to be very cognizant of what elements are really sharp and what elements are really blurry. I know just by going around her hand, it wasn't the sharpest thing in the world. Some of this is just to get a softer edge on her, and this is one way of doing it. Certainly the other way of doing it is to blur your mask ever so slightly. So we're just running through this real quick, and there's one other section I want to get. I want to make sure I got her behind her eyelids, and then down here again, because I mentioned that she just didn't seem like she should be that hard lined right there. And I think I'm pretty satisfied with that. Like I said, there's a few things with the globe that I would go back in and try to fix. Where it pulled too much out and took too much out. And I can come back in with my blur tool and blur this up if I think it's too sharp later. That's probably what I'll do right here, because I completely missed that, or I can just run over it real quick. Because it is having some issues identifying where the plastic is and where that light blue background is. And then real quick, let's just do the inside here. Okay, I think I'm happy. So what I want to do over on the right hand side, I want to output, instead of outputting to my layer mask, I do want to output this to a new layer with a layer mask, and that's just because the selection process and everything was very a little complicated. So I want to be able to go back one additional step. So if I just click OK here, you can see that it turned off the original layer and it added a background copy. So if we were to turn this original background copy, so if I go just rename this refine mask, right? I turned on the original, you'll see that she's cut out with a pair of scissors, right? That's what we don't want. Now we're here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this image, I'm going to pull it over to the right hand side until a blue line pops up. See the blue line? And then let go, and that puts us side by side. I'm going to take this layer, I'm going to click and I'm going to drag and I'm going to bring it into here. I know she's really big in comparison because the other image is not nearly as high res as this original one is. I'm going to come in here, I'm going to hit Command T to transform. I'm going to hold down Shift because that's what my preferences are set to. I'm going to scale her down to where I kind of want her. Double click, and then I'll zoom back in, and we can see that there's a little bit of a halo effect around her because she was on a lighter background than she is now. So what I want to do is I want to go back to my mask. I want to go back into select and mask. And I want to make sure that, let's see, let's do this on layers this time, the view. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to shift my edge, and we're going to see if we can't solve that halo just by shifting the edge into a negative percentage. You know, it looks like we may have to go over the refine edge tool again on our hair. Maybe to pull more of that out. I zoomed out the wrong way. But for the most part, just shifting that edge in, it revealed a few issues with the mask, certainly, especially with the bag and down here in our arm. I can start to see some of the background in it. It definitely revealed where I could use a little bit more work on refining the edge to get some of that background to show up, where we have some extra blue in the background. So I can just go and like kind of just brush that in and clean that up. And then everything else I can really fix with using my paintbrush on the layer mask. So with this, in this instance, with these little small touch-ups, I just want to add this to the layer mask, because again, I have this layer in another file. And I can always come back. Well, I can't show you, but I can always go back to that file I was working in and pull back the original file. So if I really messed up, I could go back to this file right here, and I could pull this layer back in. Speaking of which, what I want to do now is I do want to go in and I do want to do a save as, and I want to save this as a PSD file, and I want to simplify the name. We always want to name our things. You know, woman, globe. You know, something easy, something I'm going to recognize. Save that, and I can close this layer now, or that file. And then in this one, I want to go ahead and do a save as, and I'm going to save this one as a just composite. And then, like I mentioned, there were a few things that we could clean up. So if we make sure we have our layer mask selected, which we do, and I'm going to zoom in here. And these are the things I want to just clean up. What I can do is I can take my paintbrush tool, and it's really large right now, so I'm actually going to make it a little bit smaller. And I want to have white to be my foreground, so I want to be painting in white. So I'm just going around and just checking up on the edges of the mask, and I'm just painting white basically on my mask to reveal, as you could see with that mistake. And I'm just trying to clean it up a little bit. And if it gets a little bit too sharp, we can come in over top with the blur tool and blur the mask. And you do that by going into right here. I think the default tool is the blur tool. You'd grab that and just go over the mask a little bit. But if we go back to our paintbrush, I'm just going to finish and clean this up. Okay, so seeing that I had to do a lot of cleanup on the edges, I probably would have been better off just coming in and just blurring the edges of the mask rather than trying to fix them with the refine edge tool, because it did end up taking out a lot of just a very thin layer that I had to go in and clean up. So that would have definitely saved some time. So if you're thinking that this took a little bit extra time, it definitely did. But that was my mistake for using the refine edge tool on her skin. So next up, we'll tackle the horse. But But I'm going to do that in a separate video so I can show you how to use adjustment layers. Thank you for your time and have a wonderful day.